Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. We are about to start our event in a moment. This panel discussion focuses on sustainability of buildings, a very important topic of the present. Until more people are joining, let me make our time together interesting. Did you know smart and sustainable buildings help reduce operating cost and improve occupant productivity? It can reduce energy usage by 24 to 50%, water usage by 40%, carbon emission by 33 to 39%, and solid waste by 70%. Amazing, isn't it? Well, this is just an example of how our eminent panelists are going to provide similar unique information and understanding about sustainability. So now let's get started. I, along with Dhara, wish you all a very good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. A warm welcome to you all to this panel discussion event on driving sustainable and smart buildings in India, organized by INBAC Association. You must be wondering what our eco-building escort, Dhara, is doing here. Well, I have specially invited her since she is the most concerned stakeholder when it comes to sustainable buildings. She has been teaching me many interesting facts on sustainable buildings throughout this month. First thing Dhara told me, if a building is evolving towards being sustainable, it will eventually become smart, green, and efficient. What do you all think about it? Well, this panel discussion event is going to give you deeper insights into this and much more. I'm Adrija Roy Chaudhary and I'm your anchor. Let me quickly brief you all about INBAC a bit. INBAC, the leading integrated building automation community in India, is a community of all building automation stakeholders, starting from system integrators, OEMs, consultants, facility managers, to government bodies, educational institutes, building owners, suppliers, who are collectively working towards the cause of interoperable, data-driven, connected, energy-efficient, and secure smart spaces in India. INBAC empowers you to connect by engaging in various public-private partnerships, collaborate by providing user and enterprise-centric platform to enhance your global networking, and create by providing an ecosystem to create value-driven solutions. INBAC Association aims to drive standardization within the building automation industry in India by creating awareness about various building automation technologies and open communication protocols, which meets the critical need of Indian market. The objective of INBAC is to bring ISO-based global standardization to India so that Indian products are globally acceptable and pass on the benefits to the end users, builders, consultants, industries, and various government initiatives. INBAC leverages its strong connects worldwide to adopt various standards available and in use internationally. Now, moving ahead, I would like to quickly brief you all about the process flow of today's session. We will start with INBAC's concept and journey by Sakhi Chandrayan, followed by keynote by Mili Majumdar, a dynamic sustainability leader, panel discussion moderated by our vibrant Harsha Vachar on the topic of driving sustainable and smart buildings in India with our eminent panelists, Ashwint Ijankar, architect and consultant, Rupesh Kumar, smart data center user, Sudhir Krishna, chairman, Smart Cities for Bureau of Indian Standards, and James Burke, Global Thought Leader, followed by Q&A round with audience. Now viewers, let your questions come to us without any hesitation. Ask whatever you feel like. We will try and take as many questions from you as possible and as the time permits. I would also request all viewers to drop in your comments throughout the event. This round will be followed by closing note by our keynote speaker and finally thank you note by our INBACer Rajesh Adhangale. Now I would hand over to our very own Sakhi Chandrayan. She is a social entrepreneur and an industry veteran of over 20 years of experience on whose capable leadership INBAC is shining brightly. Sakhi.
Namaste all. Let us talk about India. The construction industry in India is booming due to continuous urbanization, upcoming infrastructure projects, and a growing population base. Smart cities, housing for all, Make in India, Atal Mission for urban rejuvenation and transformation are the cornerstones for the foreign investments. What is there for us? 66% of construction companies after the pandemic in India are prioritizing digital transformation, says IDC report, by learning the best practices from the developed markets. INBAC is doing exactly that. We are your collaboration partners. Good news, isn't it? This is a great deal of opportunity, which also brings a great deal of responsibility towards us. We need our buildings better than ever. We need sustainable solutions, avoiding the depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. Sustainability is no more an option, not only for our environment, but also for continuous growth of the building automation market. We need smarter solutions than ever. We should be able to see the status of our building now and here, collect the data, cleanse the data, analyze it, interpret and apply. What more can I do for my users and this environment? What solutions do I need? In all this area, do you want to make a difference? Are you the leader who can represent India on the global platform? Do you want to create standardization to secure your business growth? Do you want to leverage global collaborations and strong networks? Do you want to drive the future of sustainable buildings in India? Are you curious about implementing the global innovations in India? INBAC is your place. INBAC is your platform. INBAC is committed to build the customer trust and grow the building automation market. It is also committed to champion the cause of interoperable, data-driven, and sustainable smart spaces. I take this opportunity and say this to you all. Come, join INBAC.
Thank you so much, Sakhi. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Millie Majumdar, our eminent keynote speaker. She is a building technology specialist with more than 2.5 decades of experience in the field of energy and environment with a focus on sustainable development of habitats. She is proficient in enabling green buildings and sustainable city planning. She has led multidisciplinary global teams to develop and implement portfolio of green rating systems for habitats and energy systems that have been widely accepted globally. She has been at forefront of policy development and enforcement and has been part of BEE, BIS committees in relevant initiatives. She has authored various books in the domain of sustainable habitats and is a regular blogger at Economic Times. Millie, we earnestly welcome you to this panel discussion event and request you to share your thoughts, please.
Thank you very much, Rija. Thanks, Saki, for the invitation, and it's an honor. It's a great pleasure to speak, without seeing any faces. But I think virtual media has given us immense opportunity to be global. So welcome to this discussion, and which is, I promise, going to be very, very interesting. And we have a very power-packed panel discussion planned ahead. But it was my honor to set the context for it. Let me just share my screen and get started. Can you see my screen? Can anybody give me a cue?
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks again. And so today, in this 10 minutes, I thought I'd just speak about, like, we are talking about green buildings, smart buildings, and we also give a lot of numbers when we speak. And all of you are from the automation community who encourage buildings to be smart so that they function to give those numbers, that the numbers which Atrija spoke to us about in terms of the energy savings from 20 to 50%, water savings by 20 to 30%, etc. So those numbers are there for us, and we have heard about them over and over again, right? But how do you really quantify? Do they really make any meaning to us? That's very crucial. So I'm just going to lay out a few crucial points about green and smart buildings, which can enable us to think in a more collaborative and integrated way as we move forward in this journey. So just to begin with, I represent the US Green Building Council. And we operate multiple rating systems globally in about 167 countries, and LEED rating system is our mother brand and our key enabler for green buildings, communities, and cities globally. So we know that, and when we speak about green buildings, we say that it's very unfortunate that we talk about it only in very niche sector, but green buildings are for everybody. And most importantly, green buildings are for the most vulnerable people who do not have access to basic energy, water, etc. So it is all the more important that people who can afford it use it less through green building principles, so that down the line, people who are vulnerable and do not have access get that saved amount of energy or water from us. So that's very important, that green buildings is for everyone and not only for the elite society. And of course, we have heard that it saves money, it consumes much less energy than a conventional building, uses much less water and uses much fewer resources, and offers a better indoor environmental quality. Now, this is something which I say all the time, that we talk about saving the vital resources, which is very crucial, but finally buildings are for people. So people who are occupying green buildings, they should be aware of the fact that they are in a better environment that is good for the environment and good for themselves. And better indoor environmental quality is one of the very key components through which you can measure whether a green building is really functioning as green or not, in addition to energy savings, water savings, etc. Now, I am trained as an architect, and when I started my journey as a student, we used to, and in our times, like I have passed out from college several years back, and many of you may not have been born then who were attending. So we were taught to do intuitive design, like it was fancy. We used to do our designs in butter paper, tracing, and so many different kinds of paper. We didn't have computers that time, and it should look beautiful. And whatever we used to say, line that we draw on the piece of paper, our only intent was to make it look beautiful so that we get good marks. But now, when I moved from the drawing board to profession and started working in the field of green buildings, then I realized that fact that each and every line that we draw, each and every, say, tree that we draw using a stencil on that paper has a meaning. And we as designers can influence the space through a more responsible design. So I would say green design is a shift, a lateral shift from being intuitive about the design process to practice more responsibly. So this is what I say, that when I used to draw trees on the drawing paper, in the tracing sheet, they were with the purpose of making it beautiful. But then, in one of the projects, I landed up in Bangladesh, where there were so many vulnerable people who every year they were facing the brunt of the fury of the storms and the cyclones that hit. And then I understood that trees can have a much better impact in the responsible design process. Suppose tree can be a very good guard if they're planted against high wind forces. They can be their roots, if we do not kind of resort to deforestation, they can hold the soil and there will be less erosion. So I think this is, I'm just giving an example. And in this dialogue, it's very important for us to understand that green design or smart design is nothing out of the world or something that everybody cannot do. It is simply being a responsible designer and think before we draw that line or that tree on that piece of paper. So I would say value engineering is the root of green design and smart buildings, and shifting mindsets from intuitive design to a more responsible design. And this also kind of entails that all the users come together to make the design happen, and every person has a role to play, and that is what we call is as an integrative design process. And I say that through this integrated design process, when we evolve a building, all these systems become heart of the building and different organs of the building. And I would say, the building automation people can give the soul to the building, which means that they can allow the body, which is the building, to function in the correct way so that it achieves the purpose of being green, of saving energy, of saving water, etc. So when I'm talking through the green building process, one is the design phase, one is the construction phase, and next is the performance. And performance is the most crucial aspect. Unless we derive good performance from a green building, any amount of good design can go waste. Let me show you this project in Japan, when I was walking through the street. So this looked very a simple facade, but there is a lot of integrated thinking behind the facade and a lot of automation that has gone to make the building achieve about 60% energy savings. So behind the screen, there was this kind of innovative glazing system that filtered sunlight appropriately, that housed all the services so that it can duplicate as the place instead of maybe a traditional ducting system inside the spaces, so on and so forth. So this required a lot of integrated and a value engineering based design amongst different designers, and this has a very good automation system which ensures that all these systems function in tandem with each other and give the necessary output for the building to function, which is one of it being a 60% energy savings. So integrated and a green design is a cumulative impact of all these services coming together and giving a good design. And again, since I do not have time, but in doing so, nowadays we have access to several tools, techniques, etc. to make it happen. And this is possible, and many people are really doing it. And this also helps us to analyze different systems, different building forms, and anticipate the performance before we get into the drawing board and actually design the systems. Some of the good designs that have been evolved, say this is in the Masdar city, designed by Norman Foster, where the facade, it looks interesting, but it has been derived through an ecological planning process and by use of this visualization and tools and techniques, and then embedded automation to make it function appropriately. So through this integrated design process and green design process, we can achieve this kind of savings at the design stage. But do they really perform? That is the big question. And in the LEED system, we are encouraging buildings more and more towards a performance-driven approach to certification. And we have also developed a kind of an energy tracking as well as environmental system tracking platform that allows you to track the performance on a real-time basis and tell you whether you're performing as per design, and then do the analytics and take actions based on that. And say, for example, a building cannot be perpetually rated to be gold, silver, platinum, etc. It can go up and down, and only if you are able to visualize the performance, you can do that. This is an example of an Ascendas building in Chennai that was able to upgrade the performance since it visualized its performance and was able to take corrective actions and incremental actions to make it work better. One of the very, sorry, I'm over time, but I'll just take 2 minutes more. So, another important thing what I feel is the indoor environmental quality, because that's very, very crucial for us, that buildings are for people, and people inside the building should have a good environment in which they're functioning. And these are the multiple parameters within the building that a building automation system can help us also to so a building by use of a building automation system, also we are able to control them and provide an effective environment that enables healthy living. Now, I'll just end with a few slides on a study that we have recently conducted in about 30 office buildings that are all designed and rated to be green. But when I'm talking about performance, this is very crucial. You will see that these are all highly rated buildings, but see these images, this building was supposed to have a lot of daylight, but then from the windows where the daylight is supposed to come, they have put high workstations or maybe almiras, etc. For storage. This building was designed to have a variable airflow system, but they are not operating the variable system drive, and the building does not have an automation system. So what did they do? They just taped it out so that the airflow can be just simply be lower and doesn't cause any kind of thermal discomfort. On the other hand, if the same building was able to function in a more practical way and taking help of building automation system, then the building possibly could have functioned as it was designed. So it's very, very critical that we are able to maintain the spaces to be healthy. And nowadays we know that air pollution is a big, big concern. And again, all these buildings, in many of these buildings, we have found that though they are certified, they are not maintaining the IAQ levels inside. And there are simple things like, for example, the closed outdoor, air damper, or maybe a hole in the filtration system. So what about green in all of these? So we found that ventilation remains one of the main key concerns, and the CO2 levels were very high. And there, I guess, automation can play a very large role in creating this enabling a good, healthy environment for people. We found a lot of concentration of formaldehyde inside the spaces due to furniture, air freshener, incense burning, etc. And people inside had no clue to that. So I just want to end by saying that it's so important for us to raise the bar, to construct in a green way, to operate it in a green way, monitor, maintain, and raise the bar continuously, and follow this life cycle approach. And performance is the key to a green and smart building. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Millie. That was an incredible start. Your thought process resonates so much with World Nature Conservation Day, that is today. So now I would introduce our moderator, Harsha Bachchar. Harsha brings over 15 plus years of hands-on knowledge in cybersecurity, IoT, driving successful initiatives in operational technology, cybersecurity, and strategic growth for many companies. Harsha will be conducting the panel discussion henceforth. Over to you, Harsha.
Thank you, Adrija, for the warm welcome. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar. Let me introduce you to our panelists for the session today. Our first panelist, Ashwin Ijantkar. Ashwin is the principal consultant at Epsilon Design Consultancy. Ashwin started Epsilon Design Consultancy in 2007 to provide building engineering services in different industry spectrums, such as IT and ITS, banks, hospitality, data centers, and many more. Welcome, Ashwin. Our next guest, Dr. Sudhir Krishna. Dr. Sudhir chairs the Smart City Technical Committee of the Bureau of Indian Standards and the TIFAC Committee on Smart Habitats. Dr. Sudhir was a member of Indian Administrative Services for 37 years, till he superannuated in June 2014 as Secretary, Ministry of Urban Development, wherein he steered the various national programs and policies for planned urban and regional development. Welcome, Dr. Sudhir.
Thank you.
Our next guest, James Burke. James is Vice President, Construction Sales at Johnson Controls. James provides strategic and executive leadership to achieve market share growth and secured results for Johnson Controls' North American field business. James is also responsible for the product roadmap, strategy, and profitable growth of JCI's global BS brands. Welcome, James.
Yep.
Our next guest, Rupesh Kumar. Rupesh is Vice President, Data Centers at Sifi Technologies. With over 20 years of experience in handling network and data center infrastructure and projects, Rupesh focuses on sustainability matrices and integrating the same with various industry-leading building management platforms for operations sustainability. Welcome, Rupesh. Once again, on behalf of INBAC, I welcome our esteemed panelist. Today's session is on driving sustainable and smart buildings in India. Well, like a lot of other things that have gotten smart in recent years, smart buildings are all about giving you more control over the building environment and operations. Imagine being able to move occupants out of a space if the level of CO increases, or getting thousands of dollars from your electricity bill simply by operating your HVAC more strategically. Generally speaking, smart buildings deliver integrated lighting, improved comfort, air quality, giving greater physical security at the lowest cost with less environmental impact over the building's life cycle. And we all know that efficient building portfolio can improve the value of the real estate asset, help the bottom line cut emissions, and bolster the corporate image. Now, moving to the basics. We have seen a lot of evolving definitions of smart buildings. Like if you ask each and every person in the room, you'll hear a new definition. So let's hear from our panelists as what's their perspective about a smart and a sustainable building. And we'll start with Ashwin.
Yeah, I think yes. Thank you so much, Harsha. Extremely good start to the program by Majumdar ma'am. She really hit the nail, so to say. But coming to the question, yes, smart is a very subjective word. It could mean different to me and different to someone else. I always look at it from the perspective of the 3 O's that typically are very important to me when I design for buildings. And those 3 O's are owners who own the building, operators who actually operate the systems and run the building, and the occupants who are people like you and me who occupy the building. So smartness varies in terms of individuals' need from a particular utility. So there is no clear-cut definition, but definitely from the perspective of the 3 O's, it's basically to ensuring energy efficiency in the building and ensuring that the building is sustainable. Sustainability means that the building really harmonize itself to the working environment that it sees internal and external to the building. So that's my perspective or my take on sustainability aspect of a building.
Thank you, Ashwin. I completely agree. Dr. Sudhir?
Well, I agree with what Mr. Ashwin said and would like to, but go a little beyond O. I would like to go to P now. Okay. I define sustainability in terms of 4 P's. And the first is planet. We should be able to, when we develop any space or surroundings, we should take care that the planet is not disturbed. That is step number 1. And disturbing the planet means we should not spoil the water bodies. We should not obstruct the flow of natural rainwater into the water bodies. We should not spoil the air. We should not spoil the soil. That is step 1. Step 2 is to nurture it, make it better than before. So that is as far as first P is concerned. The second P is the people. Are people able to enjoy the space equitably, or there are some people who take away all the benefits at the cost of others? So that is very critical, and that is how it has happened over some decades, leading to development of slums and so on, because we have not thought of people holistically. So the sustainable development of spaces should focus on people inclusively. The third P is about the place itself. Is the development, is the construction activity spoiling the glory of the place, the traditional ethos, the traditional form, the value system of the place? Is it going to become a concrete jungle, or a city which is supposed to be traditionally, it might be a cultural city with having its own historical value or cultural value? Is it going to be converted into a building, a city full of construction activities only? And lastly, I would say the fourth P is the profit. The whole activity of development should generate profit, should create asset value, should create wealth. And the wealth, of course, should be distributed equitably, should not become like, you don't do this, you don't do that, and so on. Many things should happen. Economic activity should prosper, and people should participate in that. So this way, I would say, we should focus on development of sustainable and smart spaces.
Thank you, Dr. Sudhir. You shared a complete new perspective of a smart building, how we look at it. James?
Yeah, thanks. And I agree with both of my my panelists in that, smart and sustainable is subjective. However, it feels like we're all saying very similar things. So from my perspective, a smart building starts with tailoring the outcomes of what the client and the constituents are trying to achieve within that space. And what I mean by that is when we think about the commercial space and the commercial buildings that we all serve from a BAS perspective, whether we're talking about a data center or a hospital or a school or a commercial office building, the occupants within those spaces all have different needs and uses. And so when we think about smart, we think about systems and applications that help achieve those outcomes that that customer and that client is trying to achieve. I love the example of the keynote speaker talking about the entire site. So when we think about smart and sustainable, it's not just energy consumption, although that's typically what we tend to focus on within the BAS industry. It's the surroundings, it's the site plan, it's the watershed and how drainage occurs on site. So when we think about a sustainable building, it's all encompassing within that site plan. And then finally, when we talk about smart, we think of interconnected systems that help, again, achieve those outcomes, as well as future-proofing the technology. Because when we think about a building, we tend to think about it during the construction phase, which is just one small part in the life cycle of that building, where these buildings that we're serving and building might last 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. And so thinking about how technology will evolve in the things that are possible in the future, maintaining and delivering a system that can grow with the building over time is critically important.
Thank you, James. And I agree. And I love the point that you mentioned, like future-proofing the technology, thinking what's now and considering what will be in the future. Thank you for bringing that. Rupesh?
Yes, so I'm just referring or just hearing what Madam Millie has spoken. So the sustainability is not an one-time exercise. We need to take that forward, and it's a continuous process. And I believe that's the very reason we are here today to discuss this topic, because sustainability is getting more and more attention. And not only the building owners, the property managers, including people like us, where we build and operate data centers, we are looking at sustainability or smart buildings or intelligent buildings, and that is becoming kind of a performance benchmark for us. And that is really a wonderful change which is happening. The thing is like maybe the current area, or in the current scenario, our sustainable initiatives are currently limited only to an energy consumption, savings or a power usage. Power is actually one of the element. Okay, even if you take a data center sustainability, it's out of 9, it's one of the element. So we have to actually be more aware, and we need to kind of make a more mature model covering all aspects of a sustainable building, and that's the way forward. Thank you, Ash.
Thank you, Rupesh. When you have the panel from a very diverse background, you get to know different perspective. And with the combination, we were able to look at the smart building from varied areas. And thank you, Millie, for setting the stage for the panel discussion and walking us through the green building process. You have given us the holistic picture of a green building process. You talked about consumers, the holistic view, not only the building, but the sites around. And then if we move to investors and stakeholders, because now we have seen stakeholders are increasingly evaluating how companies or the real estate owners and property management teams measure and manage and report sustainability progress. So then the picture of the optimal design and energy efficiency comes into place. So maybe we can start with James as how to have a balance between a robust optimal design and energy efficiency when it comes to sustainable buildings.
Yeah. So to me, this comes down to certainly from a sustainability standpoint, when we talk about energy and minimizing energy consumption, advanced sequences and applications within the mechanical systems is paramount for day one. And so what I mean by that is when we work with consulting engineers, we help craft a sequence that will minimize whether it's energy or water, while maintaining the comfort in the space. But the critical importance that we talk about with the clients that we meet with is really around the operating perspective. And so when we think about when a building is built, it degrades over time. The mechanical systems degrade, the sequences might get out of, and then the building changes. And so it's critically important when we talk about smart and sustainable that we have an operating plan so that we can maintain the performance of these systems via continuous commissioning or what have you. And so that 5 years down the road, that building is operating at its peak performance, not just at day one.
Yes, and so yes, like not only the design, but how we operate the building does matter. Because as Ms. Millie mentioned, the buildings were designed keeping in mind the green building guidelines. But when it came to operation, we saw the design of the cubicles. We saw the design of the ventilation system. So all does matter, and we do take into consideration when we run the building, run the operations in a building. Now moving to Ashwin, I guess we lost Ashwin. Yes, okay. Because he's coming from a consultant background, so thought of taking his opinion on the optimal design. Maybe we'll come back to it later. So now we have all seen technology play a key role when it comes to smart building. Though we start with the design construction, but when we start putting technologies in a building to optimize the operations, and there are so many technologies in place, there are so many solutions in place. So, like, is our audience wondering what it would take to turn your building into a smart building? Then this next question answers that. So maybe we can start with Rupesh. Like, what are the key technologies that is needed to support to bring the concept of smart building into reality?
Yeah, so for sure, the thing is that we all talk about smart buildings, right? And then I mean, most of the time we wonder, I mean, where does it start with? Okay, so when we started the journey sometime back, around 10 years back, we are also in the same situation, and then we are trying to figure out how do we make this building more smart and then intelligent. So that is when we started exploring the platforms that can help us to kind of meet our requirements. So what we have done is that I mean, when we started, for example, if you take the building automation system, it was just a monitoring tool, just to get us some data of maybe the UPS or generators or whatever it is. But that wasn't enough. So as we go, bigger, so we had to kind of monitor more and more equipments to know what is happening in that building. So that is when we started exploring the newer platforms, and definitely the OEMs like JCI and so many other people. So they also started coming along with us and understanding this, what the industry needs, especially the data center industry, where we have to monitor so many parameters, every second, and see what is the status of that. It can be a simple, temperature, reading to the UPS or the transformers or the gensets and so many things. So these are the things which the industry also evolved in the past, and then that has kind of grown along with this various industry segments. I mean, it can be a data center, or it can be an IT park, or it can be a standalone buildings. So the technology has kind of helped us to kind of bring that thing what is required for the current the smart building initiatives. So if you look at some time back, we all were kind of behind the conventional building management system using the DDCs and those kind of equipments. Now the industry has gone towards a complex a SCADA PLC based technologies that is kind of helping us not only to monitor and go beyond that, like going to an analytics tool where we can see and we can visualize and we can analyze, and also we can do a predictive decision making in our day-to-day life. So that is how this technologies has kind of brought in into this smart building industry.
Yeah, and so now we turn the table to Ashwin, because you have worked a lot on the building engineering projects. So what's your opinion? What are the key technologies that is needed to bring the concept of smart building into reality?
Yeah, there are quite a few. There's a bunch of technologies I could talk of, but I think one of the most important ones, and I think Mr. Rupesh talked about it a little bit ago, is the concept of the technology that integrates multiple systems within the building. So I'm talking of an integrated converged technology, which converges IT, OT, BAS, and business processes all put together. So you see, as Mr. Rupesh said earlier we had a run-of-the-mill vanilla kind of building automation system, which basically looked at a few parameters here and there, and someone sitting across and just monitoring those key parameters. But when you talk of a smart building, you're actually looking at going beyond that standard set of deliverables. We are talking now of integrating with IT systems of the buildings, and in fact with the business processes. So it is going much beyond the earlier set parameters. And that's one of the key technologies that we are now looking at. And underlying, we should be understanding that there is a concept of data neutralizing. So when you're talking of such different baskets and technologies getting integrated, there is a concept of data neutralizing, which is basically the system agnostic, product agnostic, protocol agnostic exchange of data between multiple systems. So it could be, for example, an access control talking to, let's say, the shading system in the building. So it's a business use case driven model, which is in fact the driving force behind the IoT technology that is it's a buzzword today. IoT has actually made automation system more accessible to the 3 O's. It's reduced hardware costs and brought in substantial savings because it's looked at the pain points of the buildings and tried to address it by creating business use cases and addressing those business use cases by selecting proper sensors, proper technology to get across to hitherto non-communicable technology, so on and so forth. So that's what I call as integrated commerce technology, and that's an important concept in today's smart buildings. The other important technology that we, in the domain of smart buildings have to come to harness is actually the IT technology, which actually brings in the idea of data storage, availability technologies, so redundancy, whether it is a high availability solutions or disaster recovery solutions. Redundancies play an important role, and IT technology helps us in ensuring that redundancies at the head end, at the network level, or many times at the component level also, to ensure that this data is now more readily and available to you for more 100% of the time. There is no failure. We also need to ensure, when we talk of emerging technologies for smart buildings, look at cloud computing. There are many softwares which are actually available as a service. So it's not necessary for you to have physical software sitting out of your building. You could have the software being offered to you as a service by a trained team of experts who are far better than having some minor technicians sitting out of your BMS room and trying to analyze data. Whereas against that, you could have a really trained team who are aware of the green aspects or maybe the sustainability aspects, and who would inform your facility team if any of your parameters going way out of the set limit, and can actually help you in ensuring that your business and your building remains smart and sustainable. So that's one technology out of the IT domain that we should be looking at when it comes to smart technology, smart buildings. I think some panelists also talked about analytics, which are of various types. So we have energy analytics, which basically looks at how we can, dashboard energies, and out of those also run analytics to ensure that information is made available to the users in an actionable form. And it's not just raw data that is being put forth to the user who's looking at the building automation front end. He's actually getting rather actionable information. There's also a software that is available for predictive analysis, which will actually let you know of a failure event that could happen in the times to come. So make you aware and make you ready for it today, so you can take action against it in real, in much earlier time. And I think all the solutions the building automation solutions that we have today are talking of artificial intelligence getting built into the software to ensure that these kind of deliverables are made available to the user. Last but not the least, we should not forget the operator. So technologies that revolve around facility management, which include automated asset management, maintenance management, vendor management, order management. All these, the fun part is all of this use the same data that we are any which way generating for the building automation system. All this analytics facility management, everything can be run using the same database, and it's like really juicing, making the max out of the data that you are generating. So I think these are the key technologies that really help in making a building smart. It depends on how the client, that is the owner, the operator, and the occupant and the designer sit together, analyze what exactly they want, and accordingly go ahead and design that particular system.
Thank you, Ashwin, and I agree with you. How we design and how we use the system. And you have raised a very important point. It's not only about the traditional systems. Now it's about how we integrate the system. So just to quickly share one of the incident. So we combined data from the building automation system with the elevators and found that many of the issue in the cable car were due to the heating conditions. So, when you combine data and you generate insights, that's where you can optimize the operations. So now moving to Dr. Sudhir, because we need government policies, we need that support to bring this concept into reality. So what are the key services and government policies that you think is needed to bring this concept into reality in India?
Well, government is for the people, and therefore all people. So that is one challenge. While the economy has to grow, the businesses have to grow, but in the process, someone should not be left out. Some set of people should not be left out. And therefore, for example, the elderly people, persons with disability. Therefore, the smartness has to be, available to all in terms of accessibility. And therefore, there are laws made to ensure that the buildings are accessible to all. So that is one factor which everyone should keep in mind. Those who are developing smart building parameters or dimensions, different dimensions they are tackling, they have to take note of this. And second, I said that the smart building should, I mentioned that they should maintain the urban form. The building should not look jarring, in a place. Just if it is very technologically sophisticated, but then it should not become an eyesore in terms of urban form of the area. So that also, and for these things, there is a guideline called URDPFI guideline, Urban and Regional Plan Formulation and Development Guidelines. So they have given a set of options and a set of regulations as to what all should be followed in terms of development of spaces particularly. As far as building proper is concerned, we have National Building Code, of which the recent version 2016 has factored in many things, but these are only giving broad framework of development. Exact itemized development is left to the market forces, left to the entrepreneurs to work out and deliver to the people. Another facet of the smartness is in terms of sustainability, in terms of disaster proneness. Once again, there also we have got regulations which require the developers to ensure that the buildings are disaster proof, the buildings are fire proof in terms of, or if any event happens, how to mitigate the damage. So that is another part. Further, the buildings can generate, the occupants of the building generate a lot of waste. The developers can generate a lot of construction and demolition waste. The occupants can create electronic waste and all kinds of. So therefore, solid waste management rules are there, which make sure that the building in the course of development of the building and in course of occupation of the building and further maintenance, it doesn't create nuisance for the environment and for the society. So that is another part. And similarly, water usage also. The smartness, as we perceive in government side, that many dimensions have to be seen holistically also in larger perspective. See water usage, whether the water is being used well, water is being recycled well, wastewater being recycled in the smart spaces, smart buildings, and also whether water is being conserved, rainwater harvesting is being factored in the building design. And so that is also a way of defining smartness. Similarly, the building, as I said, we're creating waste, whether the waste is being recycled properly, because urbanization today is growing vertical. Now, no longer we are encouraging individual units of houses. It is all going vertical all over the world and so much in India. So vertical buildings require different dimensions of safety, for occupants in case of emergency, what kind of evacuation, what kind of management, and similarly, what kind of waste they generate, how it is accessible to one and all. I mean, it is no longer you are living on 20th floor and some mishap happens and then people have to leave the building. How do they leave? Such are the factors which are required to be considered for a smart building, in addition to intricacies of technology which are very much there in the domain of technology experts. And we are hearing also from excellent panelists. They are giving very good suggestions. But from the government perspective, the overall vision of the smartness should also be factored in for making the area, space, and the building truly smart and sustainable.
Thank you, Dr. Sudhir. Your point on accessibility was spot on. I remember 2 years back, I attended one of the sessions by Rick Hansen. He advocates a lot on accessibility. So he pointed out some of the key things. We have those accessibility buttons that automatically opens the door, the ramps. So yes, that is really important. That's where we call the building is for everyone. Now, moving to James, I know you have a lot of experience in the building automation industry, and to the points that Ashwin mentioned on the key technologies. What are your thoughts on the key technologies? And now, maybe you can also highlight what are the steps or the journey that one should take to achieve a smart building?
Yeah, sure. And Ashwin brought up some really interesting technologies that we're at a precipice within the market in terms of we've traditionally thought around building automation systems the way we've deployed them over the last 10, 15, 20 years, which is on-prem hardware and software that operates mechanical systems. And really through technological advances, particularly on the IT side, the idea of IoT and cloud and digital twins and artificial intelligence is really interesting because there's a lot of different applications that have come along and use cases that could provide value. From a roadmap standpoint, what we advise clients is start with the outcomes. And so I've said this before, but start with what, and I love the way Ashwin talked about the 3 O's, from an owner, from an operator, and from an occupant. And what are the use cases or outcomes that each one of those constituents would like to achieve from the building? Not only at time of substantial completion when they move in, but 5 years down the road when they're utilizing it. Once you've identified what purpose the building is trying to serve for those constituents, then you can start to think about what systems require interconnectivity. And so when we think of interconnectivity or interoperability, this is traditional building systems. So you had mentioned integrating your BAS with your elevator is what we would term as a traditional building system integration. Energy meters would be another one, as well as a whole host. But then you also start to get into what business systems. So when we start to think about IT and OT and the operational technologies from a business system standpoint, there's new means and new ways to integrate a traditional BAS with a business system via APIs and other mechanisms to exchange data. And so once you have an idea of what systems, both building and business, that you need to integrate, then it goes into what advanced analytics would benefit the building operation. And so we tend to try and advise clients to consider, again, the outcomes that they're trying to achieve before then looking at the technologies that are out there, because there's a lot of confusion within the cloud space and the cloud analytics space. There's a lot of great applications out there that serve very disparate needs. And so when you've identified those, it makes the selection of those and the connection of those much more seamless. And it also allows you to really hone in on the value creation, because there's a cost associated with these. And so when we think about some of these systems where the value isn't, I need it to run my building, the value is I'm going to get additional insights, or I'm going to be able to save on labor, or I'm gonna be able to reduce energy cost. And so that value creation is a little bit different than I need this BAS to make my mechanical systems run. And then the last point I would say is cybersecurity. So with all of these technologies, with the explosion of IP systems and integrations and IoT and cloud, cybersecurity becomes critically important. And so doing the due diligence around not only the technologies and the cyber profiles of each of the technologies, but also the deployment. And so when the systems get deployed, are they behind good firewalls? And this is really where we start to merge the traditional BAS contractor business with the IT organizations within those customers. And I truly believe that the future of cloud and the adoption of cloud will be based on the ability for our entire industry globally to continue to develop cybersecurity expertise such that we can deploy these systems in a secure and safe manner.
Thank you, James. And you brought a really important point, like goal settings is really important, what you really want to achieve, and then which are the systems that are critical for the business. So do some analysis first, start with the pilot, measure the success, and then roll out. And the last point that you mentioned, cybersecurity, that brought a smile on my face because cybersecurity is something that I advocate for. Because we are putting more and more technology and we are connecting these traditional building systems with internet. Though, yes, and now we combine this with the IT. So we are making the building vulnerable and susceptible for cyber attacks. And we have seen there's a change in the threat landscape. It's not only the IT organizations, now the threat has moved to OT, like significant damages resulting in operational downtime, data loss, financial loss, and on top of that, a reputation loss. And many of you must have known this, the recent attack on the Florida water treatment plant is one such example where the hacker tried to gain access through TeamViewer, which was installed on one of the operator's laptop. So I would like to ask this to Ashwin and Rupesh as what are the growing trends in the cybersecurity space in India to keep the building safe from these cyber threats? And we can start with Rupesh.
Thank you. So James brought a very good point on the cybersecurity part, and that is definitely a growing concern. And as you know, as we grow our smart infrastructure, it creates more and more IP networks because we need to connect, not only a single location where multiple devices are connected. We also connect multiple locations into a central command center or, an operation center. So cybersecurity is kind of a very, very critical function to keep these assets from, this external and internal exploitations. So that is becoming a very important factor in our design itself. So I would say that we start this hygiene from the design stage itself. Very simple things. I would say that often we don't take this network very serious. As long as we are able to establish the connectivity between two devices, we are happy with that. But then we don't really go and secure this network so that we don't allow any intruder to access into this networks. So for example, when we are designing the base building management network, so we need to seriously consider or consult on this network security part. That includes the intrusion detection system and the intrusion prevention systems. So this should be part of the network or the DMS network design itself. So I would say at my organization, we started a few years back, we started keeping the DMS as a separate private network that is not even connected to the office LAN network. So we keep that completely isolated. And when we have to interconnect multiple data centers or multiple locations, that is done through a secure VPN solution, such as this MPLS VPN or a similar thing. And of course, it's all behind a firewall so that we don't take any chance on getting an external intrusion into this. So that is something which we do that. And often we do some silly mistakes also. I mean, what happens in general is that when we do this commissioning, testing, and all those things, we often leave all those test IDs and test accounts and user access, everything as it is. We don't do a kind of a sanity check, and to see that we plug all those gaps. Even when we are doing this commissioning, we often use the remote desktop applications like a TeamViewer or an AnyDesk and all those things, and then we leave it as it is. So it is very important for us to kind of implement a checklist, part of a commissioning process, that we plug all these open ports and all these gaps there, so that we don't leave anything for an outsider or an insider to come kind of access our network. This is even applicable for the user controls on the BAS or the BMS systems, like the administrative level access. Sometimes we often ignore that, and we leave that password known to everybody, and an operator, by intentionally or unintentionally, may not know the seriousness of that, and there are chances that that may get compromised. So some of these small things can actually give great value when you're doing an intelligent internet-enabled smart building systems. So it's always recommended that we take the help of your organization's IT or IS team to kind of design and help to design this BMS network. I'm sure Ashwin can add a lot of inputs into this.
And Rupesh, you brought an interesting point, because and this is we have commonly seen during the commissioning phase, users who are part of the commissioning phase are still there when the system is in operation, because we do a lot of cybersecurity assessment in the buildings, and when we go and see there, we see users who were part of the commissioning phase are still on the systems. So these accounts, which are not the active users account, can be used to compromise the system. So yes, like these are the key points that should be noted, like build security in the design and then do a sanity check. So Ashwin, your 2 cents on the cybersecurity trends in India and how we can protect the buildings.
Yeah, it's not just 2 cents, maybe 2 or 3 cents more. See, I think it's very correct that the use of internet in automation systems really brings the cyber security aspect into play. It's extremely important as we move forward, as we try to connect more and more devices using the internet, not just devices, as sites get interconnected. Because you see, for large conglomerates but multiple installations, it's important for them to have a hawk-eye view on all their installations and gather information and try and do some analysis on the very top level to work out, say for example, PUEs of all the data centers that maybe Mr. Rupesh runs across India and abroad. So there is going to be a lot of, we cannot escape sharing of data. We cannot escape the networks getting exposed, but there are ways and means of ensuring that IT and OT systems do not face such a cybersecurity threat. And there are two-pronged approach to do that. One is in ensuring that when you select application or a product, it should be cybersecurity hardened, so to say. And there are standards now. The International Association for Automation, the ISA, and the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Technical Commission, have come together and they have released a standard called as the IEC 62443, which is the buzzword, and all the manufacturers of application softwares, be it SCADA, be it building automation, are trying to conform to the standards. The standard is pretty simple. It's split into 4 parts. The part 1 is general, it's glossary and compliance metrics, etc., defined in chapter 1. Chapter 2 is to do with security policies and security procedures that need to be implemented. Chapter 3 is to do with the application software and the standards to be followed around application softwares and systems. And chapter 4 is to do with the components themselves. So it's a standard that needs to be followed, and you need to ensure that when you design and deploy IT and OT solutions and building automation solutions that depend upon these, the products that you select, are conforming to such standards. It's not the only standard. There are other standards available too, but you need to ensure that the products that you select meet those standards. And the most important aspect is the security that you take on the network side. I think Rupesh touched a little bit on that, but just to move forward, there has to be an application watchdog that actually keeps on looking for what is the network protocol, analyze the network protocol, monitor the data, monitor the traffic that you are seeing on the network. There has to be a template, a regular template that gets created and logged into the system. And then when you have, let's say, an untoward incident happening, it should be an automated response from the system saying that, hey, this is not the way in which your network behaves in a regular fashion. Something different is happening, which could mean someone is trying to intrude. So that's an important aspect, and this is a part and parcel of good network technology that needs to get deployed. The network technology also need to limit the intrusions and reduce the impact if such a intrusion happens by using firewalls. As indicated, firewalls and VPNs play a very important role. Monitoring and diagnostic of the network traffic, ensuring that your user rights are tied in one way or the other to the Active Directory that you have. So that's one. Another way of ensuring that it's only an authorized access that is happening on your network node. And ensuring encryption of your data that moves across the network, and also encryption of the data of the configuration files that you have for your for your building automation solution. I mean, these are some aspects that you have to take care of. Beyond that, even if there is a very good hacker who still is able to get through all this that you build, then you need to have a proper build back mechanism. So ensuring that you have a recovery mechanism for the head end in terms of encrypted and protected secure server, which can be built back from an earlier version of the data and the application that it was running. So ensuring that you are ready with that kind of a solution in case such an attack happens. I think this is the way you could bring down the threat that you face from a cyber attack, so to say. Over to you, Ashwin.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You brought some of the key points, like build security in the design, like start the security right from the procurement stage till the system becomes operational, and then continuously check for the security, like Rupesh mentioned. Do a sanity check, and that should be done on a periodic basis. You also mentioned the key point, recovery, because not only the mitigation practices, but then if something happens, how to handle that incident. So those are really the important thing, because nothing is 100% secure, but what we can do is mitigate the risk. Now, coming to the smart buildings, what we have seen, Ashwin, Rupesh, Dr. Sudhir, James, everyone talked about data. And we have seen like smart buildings, how they are different from the traditional command and control solutions, is the data monitoring, the analytics. And IoT allows to collect data about like any aspect of the buildings, be it operations, devices, everything. So if you want to ensure continuous functioning of your critical equipment, one can use sensors to collect humidity level, compressor vibrations, or the temperatures. So it's about the data and how we use this data like strategically to reduce the overall consumption for the optimal building operations and even the equipment usage, tenant retention. So when it comes to data that is gathered from the smart building solution, and this is a debatable question because who actually owns this data? Is it the vendor who has deployed the solution? Is it the building owner? Or is it the property management company? And I can see a smile on Rupesh's face. So maybe we can start with you, Rupesh.
Yeah, thank you, Harsha. And it's a very difficult question. So, so what happens in the? I can give from the data center industry perspective. Okay, so what happens in the data center industry is that this BMS or the BIS is no longer a secret system. What I mean is that It is not longer kept as an exclusive by the data center operator as it was before. So earlier, entire BMS room was a secure room and data was secure and all those things. But now what is happening is this BMS is extended to the customer for a real-time monitoring. So what we see is what they also see. So it's kind of extended on a secure platform to the customer also. So there is nothing which we can also hide from them, and then we all are kind of working on a transparent thing. So there's a lot of data getting generated, which is an exclusive. Sometimes we also have kind of a non-disclosure agreements with the customers to kind of keep all these informations safe. And sometimes even we don't even declare who is a customer also. So the kind of stringent NDAs and SLAs, we keep all this information very, very confidential and safe with us. And as you know, in this data center industries, so the kind of data which is getting generated, and also with the kind of integration getting expanded to each and every equipment levels, and especially with the help of this IoTs, and also, all kind of devices are getting connected to the BMS platform now. And the kind of data which it is getting generated is also very huge data. So now it becomes very important for us to protect the data due to the kind of data privacy and the protection what I mentioned earlier. And you also should know that as a service provider, we even sign an SLA for a missing alarm, which means that if we miss a real event notification, we are liable to pay a penalty. So the data is very, very crucial for us, not only for just monitoring, and even to meet our SLAs with customers. So in that way, it is very, very important for us to carefully handle this data. And at this point, I feel that as a data center operator, we will still own and hold the data with us. So that is the reason we have implemented our the new BMS systems in a private cloud within our organization itself. So we have not yet, hosted that elsewhere, or we are not handed over that to our property management or the system integrators. Yes, I know that there are many OEMs and system integrators who offer this as a service. Even the equipment manufacturers like UPS or Gensets or chillers, they offer a remote support or remote monitoring as a service. So they monitor all the equipments at their office. So yes, that is a parallel activity that happens, or that has a different purpose of it. But as a whole, the data center, the building management data, what is getting created, we will be using it in-house, and we will be processing using various tools for our own purpose, and we will be sharing that with the customer for generating reports and meeting our SLAs and all such kind of things. But I'm not ruling out that maybe very, very soon, maybe we will see this industry taking a good shape, and then we may have a very robust systems and process in place that we can confidently hand over these data to maybe a third party service provider. Typically maybe a system integrator who can handle all this information, on behalf of the service provider. So that may be happening very soon.
Yes, and all this information needs to be fed in the state-of-art property managing systems, so that you derive patterns, you derive information out of it. And the interesting point you made, because I'm not sure, but I don't know about this, because for even the missed alarms, you have SLA. So this was interesting to know.
That's right.
Now, moving to the master service integrators. So one of the key areas, consultants and master service integrators, they dive in when they engage their customers, is the benefits one can get from smart buildings. And we read, there are so many articles that talk about the benefits. So this is one of the questions that is often asked, and I would like James to talk a little bit on what are the benefits, and to specifically mention what are the benefits to owners and tenants from a sustainable and a smart buildings, why we should invest in it.
Yeah, so I think about this question maybe in two parts. the first is the why, and we've talked a lot about the why smart and sustainable buildings. And what I would just highlight is the whys are numerous. And so when we think about, Dr. Sudhir is on here to talk about there's government and legislative reasons globally to invest, whether it's via decarbonization initiatives or incentives to get owners and occupants to invest in sustainable and smart buildings. The other trend that we're seeing from a why standpoint is corporations and corporate governance around environmental and sustainability is a critical focus now. And so particularly in North America, we're seeing companies that had never talked about the performance of their portfolio of real estate the way they are now. And it's really because these public companies, there's shareholders that are requiring this and asking of it. So when we get into the benefits, so when I think about it from an owner perspective, now it depends on the type of building, but we've seen smart and sustainable buildings in the commercial office space yield higher rents. And so the buildings that have smart technologies that are sustainable, that have LEED accreditation or WELL or whatever the certification is in the geography, tend to yield higher rents and lower turnover in their tenant churn. And so from an economic standpoint, at an owner perspective, there's a benefit there. The other piece from an occupant standpoint, from a tenant standpoint, is we're starting to see, largely driven from the pandemic, that the occupants are demanding smart and sustainable solutions. And the keynote touched on it around healthy buildings and indoor air quality, where, I would say 2 years ago, there was very little conversation around, other than the contractors and the consultants that are within the industry. We talked about indoor air quality, and we talked about technologies that would meet code, but now we're hearing occupants. So not the people who pay for the buildings, but the people who occupy the buildings demanding it. And the example I would give you is, in the United States, we're hearing teachers are refusing to come back to schools until they've been shown that there's been measures put in place around bringing in more indoor air and improving the quality of. And so I really think that what we've all lived through over the last year and a half is really fundamentally changing. And I think smart and sustainable is going to be a trend that's going to get a big boost out of this, particularly at the occupant level, because the value proposition, at least from a having enough influence to actually change the design, is now finally getting there.
Yes, and this is interesting because, we were working with one of the hospitals here in Toronto, and the occupants were curious to know as how many times the fresh air is changed. So it's more now the occupant driven, plus, investors and stakeholders, other stakeholders do play a key role. Now coming to real estate in India. In 2015, Honeywell conducted a survey and found that airports and hotels are the smartest building in India. Indira Gandhi International Airport in New Delhi was voted the smartest building in India, which has consistently improved its commitment by winning the same award for 3 consecutive years. Even in Bangalore, they invest a lot in smart buildings, even starting from the construction, while Mumbai is also taking the lead on the smart buildings. So to cut this long story short, I would like Dr. Sudhir to shed some light on what are the government vision to support smart and sustainable buildings in India?
Absolutely, this is a very critical question, because the one of the focus areas for government is housing for all. And now from housing for all, we are moving towards sustainable and smart housing for all. That requires a lot of participation, vision on one hand, and action on the other. So now the on small level, different activities like energy conservation, so migration to non-conventional energy sources, solar energy sources. There are subsidies given in tariff as well as on the on the capital side also. And similarly, in waste management also, these are given. The airport you mentioned is harnessing solar energy in a big way. Both Mumbai airport as well as Delhi airport, they are harnessing solar energy in a big way, and that makes them smarter in one way. They are also harnessing rainwater. They are also recycling wastewater as well as solid waste. So these are the things which are supported in individual manner by the government from in different perspectives. Those who recycle waste, they are given rebate in property tax in many cities. Those who use rainwater harvesting systems, they are also given some rebate in property taxes and capital subsidy also. Similarly, I mentioned about the solar energy as well. So this is for the common man at large. And as far as large projects like airports are concerned, they are definitely, I mean, they are encouraged in terms while approving the projects, they are encouraged to go in for smart solutions which save on energy, which save on water, and which also conserve the environment. So these are holistically for large, and for small, as I said, and similarly, small is dependent. Small housing units are dependent on a larger layout developer. It is not that an individual can do everything. So for that, as I mentioned, the URDPFI guideline, the town planning laws, they all encourage that all the conservation arrangements are proposed, are supported and encouraged by way of subsidies and regulated, to make it a necessary condition before approval of the project. So, and see, for example, as I mentioned, that every project should now provide for recycling of solid waste within the project itself. So that makes the project, to that extent, environment friendly and sustainable. Similarly, for rainwater harvesting also, and I mentioned. So like different angles. And National Building Code, on the other hand, has been modified now, and to provide for encourage the buildings to become smarter and more sustainable. That is the second thing. A small point I want to add about, because cyber safety was mentioned by all the panelists. So I should just mention that there are laws which have been introduced or modified to make the occupants of the building safe from cyber attacks, and buildings, both the commercial or business occupants as well as residential occupants. The Information Technology Act and is introduced in 2000, modified subsequently, so that you are safe in terms of your data and your personal data. And similarly, the company's laws and the Indian Penal Code, they have been modified to make sure that people are made safer. With all that, those who are breaching the laws, they are at times ahead of the laws. Now we hear the Google major complaint against, one of the complaint against Google worldwide is that they are using the data for some purposes which the data owner never intended. Your and my data is collected by Google, and whether they are using it for what purposes. So this is a bigger challenge. But laws are there in India to support and to protect the individuals from cyber misuse of their cyber security requirements.
Yes, and we all need building standards. We all need incentives to legislate for change, especially when it comes to creating an environment, like you mentioned, rainwater harvesting, to encourage the wider adoption of sustainable technologies in homes as well as in buildings. And this all starts with raising our standards and working to ensure that the solution we deploy are energy efficient, open, interoperable, and future-proof. So, James, I would like to have your opinion on how open standards, interoperable solutions play a role in making the building smart and sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, it's really foundational, right? So I've been reading the chats, and there was a couple comments around data, and so when we think about the systems that have been deployed in the past, all that data has really resided in each individual system. So whether it's a BAS or a UPS or a piece of HVAC equipment or lighting, and so the ability to have use cases and outcomes that leverage the data amongst each other is foundationally critical, that we have an interoperability standard. And that's really, what BACnet was formed on, and the mission behind it. When we think about integrations and interoperability. From a manufacturer perspective, one of the critical guidelines is around ease of sharing data. And so reducing the complexity of interoperability is really critical for our industry. And I think that within the BAS space, it's gotten better, and it's certainly much easier than it was, even 5 years ago of connecting into, BACnet enabled systems. But now we're starting to get into APIs, and we're starting to get into business systems that are at the precipice of our industry. It's not so much that technology is new, because APIs have been deployed in the IT space for quite some time, but the upskilling and the knowledge of being able to connect via different means and mechanisms. And then when you introduce the cloud, it's another set of technologies and another set of integrations and capabilities that really, from an industry standpoint, we're on this maturation curve. And so there's a lot of very highly technical and highly competent teams out there that can stitch this data together. But I would say at that level, we're not at mass like we are from a in the building sharing data via BACnet. But I think it's indicative of where we are in the spectrum of these technologies, and as an industry, as we continue to mature and I would say looking more like IT is probably the wrong comment, but being able to leverage those sets of integrations and capabilities is really critical, particularly because that's how the data is shared typically in the cloud.
Agree. And one of the key things that goes with the requirement when we assess any PropTech solution is how you integrate. Like, do you provide APIs? Are there any messaging protocols? So I think that's the path we are going forward. And the low-hanging fruit is to ensure that all the buildings comply with the government regulations, comply with the open standards and interoperability. So to our audience and to our panelists, we have moved to the end of the webinar. And I would like to highlight the role of INBAC in smart buildings in India. And we all know INBAC Association is a nonprofit organization driving a community of various stakeholders that are involved in the building automation domain in India. They are on a mission to drive standardization within the building automation industry. So as a last question, I would like to ask this to each of our panelists as how do they see the role of INBAC in driving and supporting private and public sectors for smart buildings? We can start with Rupesh.
Yeah, so I would like to just quote Peter Drucker. So what he said is that, you can manage what you can measure, right? So that's a very famous quote, which we all know. And then we all are working towards to kind of know what is happening inside a building. And in terms of its, the strength and weak points and opportunities and everything. So that requires a lot of awareness, and that is why we all are here. So from a kind of a consortium, or it's kind of a group that gives these kind of awareness for the users and developers and OEMs and integrators. So that is where I feel that INBAC can play a very, very good role in connecting and bringing together all these people into forums like this, where we can discuss, more often, and then share our thoughts and ideas. And also, it would be a good idea to kind of bring in a separate platform for taking user feedbacks to the OEMs who can develop products and services based on these feedbacks. So I see that INBAC is going to play a very, very good role in achieving this.
Thank you, Rupesh. Dr. Sudhir.
Well, I think bringing technology and the people closer to each other, that's one important role the INBAC can play. The technologies are, and the other thing is to bring in research institutions into this arena. You see, a lot of research activity is required, and we have potential, we have got institutions, but the projects are to be floated. The industry has to support the project, and the researchers have to undertake the project. So whether INBAC can bring the two together, industry and research institutions on one hand, and industry and people on the other. This is a major role for the INBAC, I would suggest.
Ashwin?
Yeah, if you ask me, honestly speaking, from an MEP perspective, we do have the ISHRE, which looks at the HVAC industry and they represent the HVAC industry in India. We also have the IEMA, which looks at the electrical industry and represents the electrical industry to the government, and conducts a huge number of programs across India. We don't have any such organization working for the building automation industry, and I believe that in the times to come, building automation is going to be an extremely key technology, and it's important to ensure that thinkers, thought process owners are all brought together, and a direction is provided to channelize this energy, and INBAC can play a very vital role in ensuring that this is achieved. I think Dr. Sudhir talked very correctly about getting research, getting done on this important aspect, and that can also be very much under the INBAC role. So I think it's a very important role that INBAC can play in India.
James?
Yeah, I think just quickly, and to build off of Ashwin's comments, I think INBAC really needs to serve as the champion. That's the organization that represents the industry, and so the industry constituents, and continues to take forward. I think what the vast majority of all of us have been saying, which is how do we further promote, educate, develop smart and sustainable solutions. And so when you're on the vendor side or the manufacturer side, we really need an independent voice within the industry that represents the entire industry. And so I really view INBAC as being that organization within India that helps to continue to promote what I think all of us would love to see is a continuation of the smart and sustainable buildings within our space.
Thank you all our panelists. To summarize the key points: creating awareness, open communication, incorporate more research activities, and bring the people together for promotional activities on a global platform. Thank you all. And now we open the floor for question and answers. So to our audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to share, and our panelists will be happy to answer your questions. So one of the questions, and this is more on the IoT, would use of IoT and integration with services be an advantage towards achieving sustainable building? James, maybe we can start with you.
So the short answer is yes, certainly. I'll give you an example. And so, and this is on several different building systems, but for instance, elevators, have a IoT solution that allows them to do remote monitoring and service. And so when we think about the disruption of an elevator being down and not having visibility to it, the facility team calls the manufacturer, their service provider. The service provider then comes out. Hours have gone by. And so when we think about IoT, really the enablement around a different service delivery and a preventative service delivery is just kind of one example of what IoT can do. And there's a multitude of examples, but that was front and center.
Ashwin?
Yeah, I think it's, the whole topic is around sustainable buildings. And I think IoT definitely contributes because for one, it ensures that multiple parameters of multiple utilities that formerly perhaps was difficult or very costly to integrate or measure is now doable easily by using on the internet. Not only that, even the algorithms to monitor and measure now need not be necessarily present within the premises, can be offsite on the cloud, and the applications and analytics that is making use of such data is also not necessary to be owned by the owner. It can be a service delivered by someone else. So it brings down the cost and therefore brings in sustainability.
That's interesting to know. So as one of the question, and this is more specific to Indian market, as what are the approaches being used in India to migrate legacy proprietary building automation system implementation to BACnet and other open protocol systems? We would like to have Rupesh to answer this.
Yeah, sure. So we have also kind of gone through or going through this exercise in converting some of our old data centers. So we also doing the same thing what Ashwin has also mentioned or James has mentioned. So we are also taking help of the IoT-based systems or controllers that can kind of convert the old protocols into an IP-enabled system where it becomes easy for us to hook into our the new platforms. So that is an exercise which we need to do, and definitely it needs to be done, with a lot of, attention, because often we stuck with the proprietary protocols where that has some limitations in converting that or migrating that into the platforms. Yes, but it's not an impossible task that can be done with the proper use of the right controllers and converters.
Thank you, Rupesh. So this question is more on the standards. So IoT has no defined standards. So how necessary it is possible to have one? Dr. Sudhir, your opinion on what government standards, do they play an equally important role, or we need more specific IoT standards, either globally or specific to Indian market?
You see, as I understand, the IoT standards have to be global, because we are integrating as far as information technology is concerned, as far as the smart building concepts and smart building arrangements are concerned. We have to match with the global standards, take from global players and give to global players and become a global player. So therefore, we have to align with the global standard, the IEEE standards, and there are other standard making bodies, ISOs and other, of course. So I suppose we have to work at the international level, not merely at the national level.
Great. So this question is on sustainability. What's the ideal threshold of building size to be sustainable? And we start with James.
I don't know if there is a building size. In fact, I would argue there isn't. So in the example I would give you is I try and be sustainable in my home, which is, quite small. So obviously you need to define sustainability and what you want to uncover. But, I think of, I love the example that we talked about up front around the permeable pavement to improve drainage. That could be done in the smallest of commercial office buildings, at relatively little cost, and that leads to sustainable design. And so when we get into the actual BMS and the BMS system, I think it's probably a little bit of a different answer, because obviously if there was a building or a facility that you would not have put in a traditional BMS because the need didn't occur, while we would certainly love to change that and certainly love to put BMS, or at least simplified BMS in every building. Maybe that does or doesn't make sense, but I just think sustainability, when you talk about it holistically, so outside of just the BMS purview, there is no size that I would say there's no size threshold, because there's a whole host of things that you can do that make very small improvements, but very small improvements times the scale at which as India and the globe, it can be pretty transformative.
Agreed. Rightly said. It's not only the building; it's a holistic picture. And as Millie mentioned in the keynote, it's not only the building. There are several factors that impact the sustainability. So we have time to squeeze one last question. How do you see the current mindset of Indian customer towards intelligent and sustainable buildings? Your thoughts, Ashwin, on this?
I think that the in the current environment, every owner definitely wants his building to be smart and sustainable. Though he might not necessarily keep such a lofty goal in his mind when he starts, his journey, but definitely money is something that he in his mind, and that alone could be the driving factor for him. But in a way, he is trying to make his building smart and sustainable by ensuring that he gets a tangible ROI. He reduces life cycle costs of all the equipment that he puts to ensure that his building runs, delivers performance to the users, and he also meets compliances. So from that perspective, the owner definitely wants it to be a smart and sustainable building. The operator, because I keep coming back to the three O's, the operator, if he looks at it as from the perspective of lowering his OPEX, lowering his energy costs, ensuring that he's works on a lower manpower, so manpower optimization, and also his asset optimization. And for the users like you and me, occupants, we look forward to safe, secure environment within the building, comfort, enhanced building, as Dr. Sudhir just said, that every person in a sustainable place needs to have an enhanced, equitable experience, if I might borrow his words. So I think that is delivered only by a smart and sustainable building. So it is a common goal that everyone has to, work towards.
Thank you, Ashwin. Rupesh, your thoughts?
Yeah, so as Ashwin said, that this industry is moving towards that, and more awareness is happening, and also the smart buildings are getting, intelligent. So the user is more and more aware of this now, and then that is what is going to, drive the future trends and technologies.
Thank you, Rupesh, and thank you to all our audience for sharing those questions. What a great discussion we had. Thank you, our panelists, for sharing insights on how you can transform a property into a smart building, connecting residents and building operators in a ways that matter. Smart building is a journey. It's time for you to get on the path to be smart and sustainable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Harsha. That was an extremely enriching discussion. Thank you all panelists as well. Now, I would request our keynote speaker to present her closing remarks on this event. Over to you, Millie.
Yeah, thanks, Adrija, and wonderful panel discussion. And Harsha, you have moderated it seamlessly and, with so much of technical prowess. So thanks to you and thanks to INBAC for putting this together. Also, as rightly mentioned by one of our esteemed panelists, that we do have several forum by several industry, building industry players. For example, Ishray on discussing air conditioning. We have insulation industry having their forum. But I guess this is the first time that the building automation industry has come together through a forum to discuss some of the critical issues related to the subject. And thanks to the panelists. And it will be a daunting task for me if I try to summarize, so I will not do that. You have heard it all. So for me, the key takeaways are that when we are talking about sustainability, we are talking holistically of starting, if we go top down or bottom up. In that, we are talking about the planet, we are talking about people, we are talking about places, we are talking, and Sudhir Krishnaji put it very, good, in a very consolidated framework, as well as whatever sustainability aspects we are talking about, we cannot miss out the economic aspect of it. So when I say people, people could be an owner, it could be an occupant. And when I'm talking about planet, it means that in addition to building specific interventions such as reducing energy use, as well as reducing water use, we also have to look beyond the buildings and ensure that the cities and communities that we live in are also sustainable. And automation plays a very, very important role in binding these aspects together and help us move towards a more sustainable world. And there are several technologies. But it's very important for us that since it's a very vast topic and with so many solutions, that it has to be outcome oriented. We have to exactly see or evaluate what is the outcome and for what kind of people or what kind of solutions that we are trying to tailor the outcomes for, and accordingly design the systems and the automation systems around it. And right now we are also having several integrated solutions. We are not talking in silos, and systems that can talk to each other, and systems that can also integrate multiple systems within the building, say air conditioning, operations, as well as business processes, IT systems, everything can be integrated through integrated coverage technology. And going forward, we certainly, in this world, where it's a one world, we are looking forward to protocol agnostic situations or systems that can talk to each other, and standards both at international and domestic level that allows this interoperability among the systems. That is also very, very critical. And importantly, whatever systems we are trying to deploy, it's for the people and occupant comfort, occupant health is supreme. So we also have to ensure that their health is not impacted in any way. And when we are putting all of these systems together, there is a large amount of data that comes in, and sometimes the data is very sensitive. We also have to look at issues such as cybersecurity in depth. And very importantly, while we are talking about sustainability, it has to be inclusive. So which means that we have to be inclusive of the vulnerable people. We have to be inclusive of the people who are maybe differently able. So sustainability has to also cross these barriers and integrate resilience, integrate concepts of accessibility to make it make buildings, cities, communities accessible and a healthy place for all of us to live in. So sorry, I think I have just scratched the surface of what has been talked about, but thanks everybody for the wonderful session, and thanks INBAC for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Millie. That was wonderful. Now, finally, I would request our renowned INBACer, Rajesh Adhangale, who is a BMS expert with over 20 years of experience, who has been an integral part of INBAC since its foundation, to conclude this session. Rajesh, over to you.
Thank you, Adrija. Modern era building management system is a concept where we have multiple levels of integration, having different communication protocols, and each having its unique challenge. Integrated building management system is a concept where we embrace all these integrations together onto a single seamless platform. I feel proud to be a part of this building management system culture, where we strive to unite diverse integrations and provide a single platform-based, open and seamless solution. This is truly unity in diversity. I, on behalf of INBAC, start by thanking all the viewers and audience who made themselves available amid their busy schedule for this super energetic and knowledge enriching panel discussion of driving sustainable and smart buildings in India. I express gratitude to Millie Majumdar for accepting to enrich the panel discussion as a keynote speaker and setting a tone for this wonderful event. Your views on green buildings are very much appreciated. A building management system can be made operational through 3 O's: owner, operator, and occupant. What a wonderful thought. I tender my heartfelt thanks to Ashwin Izankar for emphasizing the importance of a good design to make building automation concept actually work. I'm grateful to James Burke to enlighten us through his views about how the global building automation market has evolved. This also gave us a great insight about our journey and destination towards smart buildings. My special words of gratitude to Dr. Sudhir Krishna for his wonderful comprehensions about government's vision to support smart and sustainable buildings in India. Post this pandemic, the role of data center has become even more crucial to building automation industry. I extend my appreciation to Rupesh Kumar for making himself available and sharing wonderful insights on data collection and data security measures. I am much obliged having on board Harsha Vacher as a moderator. Thank you, Harsha, for this meaningful discussion and making the session interactive. This panel discussion wouldn't have been possible without the active involvement of collaboration partner, BACnet International and BACnet International team. Thank you for all your support. Finally, all my own INBAC team, it has been privilege to have colleagues like you, full of energy and dedication. My special thanks to Adrija for wonderful introduction. And finally, I acknowledge with appreciation about Sakhi's contribution and her tremendous efforts in making this panel discussion a reality. Thank you and see you again soon with yet another thought-provoking topic. Take care and goodbye.